Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Adoption Happy Hour brought to you by NAAP. We are the National Association of Adoptees and Parents, and our mission is to unify the adoption community, elevate our diverse voices, and promote dialogue, understanding, and healing through education, awareness, and connection. My name is Greg Gentry. I'm a domestic infant adoptee from the baby scoop era. I'll be hosting today. And we're excited to have Rhonda Roorda with us, who we'll be introducing in just a moment. But before that formal introduction, we do have some guidelines to go over and also some couple of housekeeping items. Jen, do you have something for us?
Yep. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
So
So,
again, we are the NAAP. Please remain on mute. You will at this point not be able to unmute yourselves until the Q&A session, but at that point we do encourage you to raise your hand either on screen using the icon button or virtually, and you will be called on in the order in which you raise your hand. And please do use the chat to make comments. Those are always lively and interactive and good for the host and the guest. If you are experiencing a serious mental health event or suicidal thoughts, please contact a licensed professional or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by dialing 988. And this is a public meeting with no guarantee that information or identity is confidential. And a reminder also that portions of the event are recorded and may be shared in our private happy hour group and on Facebook and also on the on the NAAP YouTube channel where we have all kinds of offerings for you, and we hope you will go ahead and check those out. So now on to housekeeping. Thanks, Jen.
sorry, I clicked the wrong screen.
That's all.
Um, so I wanted to start with the usual. Just if you're not aware, if this is the first time you've been to this program, we do have other programs. Happy Hour is on the first and third Fridays of the month. On Tuesdays, third Tuesday of the month, we have Dr. Joyce with putting yourself together after reunion. On the fourth Thursday of the month, we have Migrating to Wholeness with Dr. Liz. And on the second Thursday of the month, we have First Families with Amy Seek. Same process. You register on Eventbrite and join us on Zoom. And then one last thing that I wanted to share with you, because we have not publicly announced it. So we have said it in one other program, Dr. Joyce's program, but we're coming back with a NAP conference. Everyone has been asking for years because we've done being co-founders and co-hosts of Untangling Our Roots for the last three conferences. We are coming back to do our own conference. This will be in Indianapolis, April 22nd through the 24th, 2027. We will be doing a call for proposals probably in the next 2 weeks. So if you would like to speak, you know someone you think you would like to hear speak, please let us know, share the information. We will have this on the NAP Facebook page, so you can come and get that information. And then the other thing I wanted to let you know, we had talked briefly in all of our programs and on our social media about the Iowa Supreme Court case, the birth mother who was sued by the adoptive parents and was awarded $70,000 that she has to pay these adoptive parents because they didn't like her language. Things like coercion and that kind of stuff. They found those that be actionable. So there's an appeal with the Iowa Supreme Court, and NAP, Saving Our Sisters, in the Iowa Adoptee and Family Coalition came together, and we filed an amicus brief in support of this appeal. So a friend of the court. Our argument in this is that this is language that's been used in our community for 50 years. It's not something that we can be sued for. So we did this in effort of protecting our First Amendment right to free speech and talk about our experiences and everything within our community and not be sued for it. Probably going to be a year-long process. We'll keep you updated when things happen. So I just wanted to leave you with that. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for the exciting news of the conference and also the important news out of Iowa. We appreciate the updates on those. And it's my pleasure right now to introduce our guest for the evening. Rhonda M. Roorda, MA, is a prominent and influential figure in the field of transracial adoption. As an award-winning author, speaker, consultant, and executive coach, she advocates passionately for children and families while emphasizing the experiences of transracial adoptees. Rhonda's journey to discovery and her purpose began when she was adopted from the New York foster care system at just 2 years old, placed into a home with a white American family of Dutch descent. Growing up in the Washington, D.C. area with her two non-adopted siblings, she encountered challenges with her identity, recognizing the importance of connecting with others who looked like her and understanding the complexities and nuances of transracial adoption. Her book, In Their Voices, Black Americans on Transracial Adoption, was named the 2016 Outstanding Academic Title by Choice Magazine. In collaboration with the esteemed late Dr. Rita J. Simon, Rhonda has co-authored a groundbreaking trilogy that explores the experiences of transracial adoption from multiple perspectives. And the titles of the books are In Their Own Voices, In Their Parents' Voices, and In Their Siblings' Voices. Rhonda's highly anticipated debut memoir, Torn from the Root, which we'll be hearing about tonight, is due to be released this month, July 2026, by Temple University Press. So much excitement around that. A lot of anticipation of seeing her work here. And Rhonda's work makes a substantial impact across various groups, including academia, adoption agencies, family support organizations, and even the entertainment sector. Her insights are valued by both organizations and families in the United States and around the world. Her notable awards include the Judge John P. Stakidi Adoption Hero Award 2010, Friend of Children and Youth Award from the North American Council on Adoptable Children in 2017, and the Richard K. Ransom Award 2022, which she received at the Adopt America Gala for her exceptional work in supporting children and families and for her role on the Emmy-winning TV show This Is Us. Most recently, she was granted the Vanguard Adoption Award 2024 from Adoption Knowledge Affiliates. Rhonda, it's a pleasure to welcome you, and what a wonderful bio you have here. We're really excited to hear from you tonight. Welcome to Happy Hour.
Thank you. It is an honor. I am so happy to be here. I do not think I've ever joined NAAP on a happy hour. So thanks for having me. Just so everybody knows, I am at Calvin University, which is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I just finished taping the introduction to my soon to be released, although it came early, Torn from the Root, a memoir of a Black transracial adoptee. And so, yes, oh, look at all of the hearts. Oh, you guys are making me so comfortable. Um, so I want to just say thank you to Calvin University and then also the production manager, Kendrick Satterfield, for his time in collaborating with Temple University on this project. So thanks to Kendrick, especially. So here I
Wonderful.
am. Here I am.
Great. You look very professional in that setting. It's
Yeah,
you're ready to go.
I'm ready to
We're gonna
go.
have a great conversation. Yep, the sound is great, and I can tell you're enthusiastic about the message. So we're really happy to have you here, and I'm honored to have had a chance to look very briefly at the book so far, and it was so wonderful the things I have been able to spend time looking at. And of course, I want to pour into it in greater detail when time allows here, and also look forward to seeing you on your book tour when you come out to Boston in a couple weeks here. So that'll be exciting too,
Yes,
to meet you.
yes.
So you've written a number of books, Rhonda, and I noticed as I looked through the titles of them, there's kind of a cumulative effect here or a progression leading up to the release of your memoir. So before we get into the details more of your memoir, I wanted to know if we could just cover a little bit about your adoption story. Of course, the memoir is very detailed about it, but maybe for people who don't know a lot about your story, maybe a couple points about, first of all, how you entered the foster care system as a very young person, and then how you were adopted. Would that be okay?
Yes. So
Yeah.
obviously my name is Rhonda Roorda. I was adopted. Well, let me go back. I was born in 1969. You know, whenever you do memoirs in these books, you got to tell your age. So, but just to give you some background, I was born in 1969, and shortly thereafter, I was placed into the New York foster care system voluntarily from my by my birth mother. 2 years later, after being in a African American home, I was officially adopted into a white family. This is at the end of the civil rights movement. You were seeing more and more white parents wanting to contribute to society's parentless children. You also saw some parents who obviously wanted to build their family and they chose adoption. And the stories of adoptive parents vary. Could be infertility, it could be this is what I feel called to do, and many, many more reasons. Nonetheless, I was adopted into this family, and this type of family building was not truly studied. And so my story really starts at the edge of the discussion around should Black and brown kids be raised in white homes. So in my process of discovering my identity, trying to understand how to navigate in both worlds, Black and white, I ended up really trying to study this issue beyond the traditional research, which essentially said love is enough, and really grappling with some of the complexities of transracial adoptions, the nuances, and the boldness of this act.
I really liked how in the very opening chapter of your memoir, you framed what was going on from the early 1960s and the time of MLK and what was going on with civil rights and racial tensions at the time. I felt like that really goes along well with what you said here about kind of situating what the country was like, what society was like. You mentioned the this kind of being it's kind of an experiment, right? There were cities where a lot of white people had moved out and left a lot of poverty in place in the inner urban areas. And I know how you mentioned here that the question of maybe white people looking at this as a chance to contribute in some way, which that can strike us emotionally a lot of different ways, right? As was that the savior complex? Well, we could talk about that, I know, in a lot of different ways, but at some point, I know you said you were placed initially in a foster family, an African American foster family, and that was one experience. I don't know if you have many memories of that, but 2 years into this, then you went to a white family, and I'm sure it was a very different thing. And could you talk a little bit, if you remember any of the transition time or what that might have been like for you?
Yeah, to set up first, let me set up Torn from the Root. This
Sure.
is a this is a book that came into existence because of my four foundational books on this subject, all published by Columbia University, and then Torn from the Root, published by Temple University Press. Um, and in the foundational work, where I collaborated for the first three volumes with Dr. Rita Simon, who was at that time the only academic or scientist who studied transracial adoption and presented a 20-year longitudinal study. But her work, along with a dozen other studies in smaller scope, supported the 1994 Multi-Ethnic Placement Act, as well as the 1996 or 1997 interethnic provision. That's the current U.S. federal policy on transracial adoption, which says you cannot delay or deny placement of a child because of race, religion, sex, etc. And that basically opened the door for white adoptive parents to have access to Black and brown kids in the foster care system who were disproportionately represented. So after I heard in the first volume from white from Black and biracial, transracial adoptees and what they had to say about their experience as young adults, leaving white privilege, the umbrella of white privilege in their homes, and then navigating into society in Black and brown skin. I started asking more questions. And then I interviewed white adoptive parents who were the parents of the adult children in the first volume. And from there, listening to what they said about did race actually matter now that you reflect on the upbringing of your children into adulthood, um, which was also very interesting. And then the next volume was from the perspective of white non-adopted siblings, siblings of the core families who didn't necessarily ask for a Black or brown sibling, including my own white non-adopted siblings. And to hear how this colorblind philosophy, which many of us were taught in our adoptive families, impacted them as far as how they protected their siblings of color, how they thought about race and their responsibility to their multi-ethnic family. Very, very fascinating. When that trilogy was done, it gave a resounding um, plea for listening to Black communities in which these kids came from. So when we discuss the impact of transracial adoption prior to my fourth book, where I interviewed Black Americans through the Jim Crow era, who grew up in the Jim Crow era, civil rights and post-civil rights, the conversation around transracial adoption really was being had by white adoptive parents, also social workers, most who were white women, and child welfare professionals and politicians who wanted to make this practice easier for white parents. Uh, so we had not heard about the stories of Black men and women who grew up in society. What were their values growing up? How did they navigate race and discrimination? What pieces of wisdom can they give to transracial adoptive families? That was a book I did solo. It was award winning. And again, we had never invited this sector to the table in discussing, is transracial adoption effective? Instead, the practice of transracial adoption, the system of transracial adoption, decided what was best was solely coming up with ideas and solutions only in white spaces. And so my work has really been to understand the complexity of transracial adoption and to find a better way we can serve those who are adopted, how we can serve. Uh, I call them, I call my birth mother mama and my birth father daddy, how we can serve them as well as the communities in which they came from. So Torn from the Root is uh, my book in honor of my mama and also in honor of the little girl within me.
So truly is foundational, everything leading up to the writing of your memoir.
That's so
That's
sweet.
really amazing. I don't know that I know of very many people who have had to write a foundational set of texts before they could write their story. And it leads me to wonder naturally whether or not it was a whole process of interpreting and reinterpreting your experience the whole time while you were learning new things, hearing the voices in the community and the ones who hadn't yet been heard. And maybe all those
Hmm.
things were had to happen first before you were willing to write or ready to write.
Yeah, so this is really deep because let me just put this out here. My adoptive parents are alive. They're alive. So are my adoptive siblings. And so to write this book freely and honestly through the heartbeat of the little girl within me took a lot of courage to be able to write it when I was ready to write it. But more than that, one of the things that I did to myself was I suppressed the very voice that I suppressed in survival within my white adoptive family. So, in other words, when the little girl Rhonda was screaming and crying out in pain, I ignored her and I was plowing through books and starting my career and trying to live a life. And I suppressed her. I minimized her. And I basically said she was not worthy. And these are things that I inhaled in my white adoptive home. But through um, life, through building a career, through being on the streets of America, through dealing with racism and discrimination, I had to look in the mirror. And so it was through intensive somatic therapy, uh, which is basically getting in tuned with your mind, body, and soul, that I had the ability to begin to build trust with that little girl. And I started penning letters to this little girl. So I'm left-handed. My strong hand is my left hand. So I would write as an adult, a student of transracial adoption, an executive in my career as a fund administrator, a letter to her to introduce myself, to tell her about me, and to tell her the work that I was doing and my big ask. And my big ask was, can you share your story with me? Can you share your story with me? And let me tell you, it took a lot of letters to write to her before she said hello. And when I put the pen in my right hand, I would just sit there and the hand would not move. Nothing and nothing and nothing. And then one day, all of a sudden, it just moved. And here she writes what she wants to tell me. And it is, I am sad that you did not listen to me. I cried out for help and you did not listen to me. I told you I was scared, and I start crying because I think about what she said to me. Um, I had ignored my boundaries. I had um, ignored her. So as she's telling me this, I told her that I'm listening now. I asked her for forgiveness, but what I ask my own adoptive parents is it's not just enough to ask for forgiveness. You have to start doing the repair work, the repair work. And I had to do that for this little girl. And I told her all the work I was doing. And one day at a time, I built this incredible relationship with her. And it was amazing to see because with that relationship, which I still deeply honor, and she is now, and all versions of me are now seamlessly connected. She started telling me details that I had purposely forgotten, details about what it felt like to be torn from the root of my mama. I am a high empath and I can feel the sustenance my mama gave me. I could feel her love. And for whatever reason I did not know, she voluntarily placed me into the system. Now, what she did do is have a list of her expectations. She expected, number one, that I be raised in a Christian home. She expected that I not just go to college, but that I get a college education. And she also demanded that the adoptive family who took me in kept my first name and that it had to be spelled correctly the way that she wanted, and that is with an H. And then in the reports from caseworkers, there was also some detail she gave about my birth family. And that is what I took to begin the process of finding my own birth family. So I could not have done it without the help of the little girl Rhonda.
So this was a way of integrating, right? A way of, well, first having to establish trust, forgiveness, and then learning. I imagine you learned so many things from her, but the heartbreak of hearing her say that to you, that I was crying out and you didn't listen to me. That must have been really hard, really devastating to come to terms with that.
It
Then
was
you,
very hard.
yeah, I imagine so. And you know how I see this parallel what you've said about if there's forgiveness for your parents, as you've said, then there's also more than the words, but the effort to make something right or correct something or to heal something in a way. And you undertook this yourself with little Rhonda inside. And wow, that's an amazing testimony there of what that type of healing can do for somebody. And I wonder,
Yeah.
did did you find that as you wrote this, because you know you said my parents are alive and I wrote freely, though. You feel that you've written freely,
I
and
wrote
what a
feel
courageous thing.
Well, yeah, I have friends who are transracial adoptees, and they have literally told me I would love to write a memoir, but I'm waiting for my parents to pass so that I won't hurt their feelings or allegiances. Well, I listened to that, but I didn't agree with that in my own journey because it's my parents who chose to adopt me. This was an experiment. The research said this is a plan where love is enough, and these children, Black, Brown, Latino, Native American, will grow up understanding who they are, connected to their families, and will have a bright future. Well, also, when we started this discussion in 1972, it was really started by groups like the National Association of Black Social Workers, who were very concerned about their children and that the removal of these children, they use the term cultural genocide, that this is a form of cultural genocide, and that it is leaving pockets open just like in many Native communities, pockets open where where there are no children, there is no future. And that the NABSW also believes strongly that adoptees like myself living in white families, and in most cases in white predominant spaces, white predominant places of worship, that they would lose sight of who they are. They would not know who they are, where they came from, and they certainly would not know the heartbeat of their legacy. So that stance was one that NABSW has held for decades. But in the discussion of transracial adoption, we have never examined what they really said, as it compares to adoptees, not just those in their 50s or 60s, but those also who are coming into their own in their 20s and 30s and 40s. We haven't had a real conversation. So, torn from the root is actually a condemnation on systems, the child welfare system, the transracial adoption system, and the adoption industry. Now, I just want everybody to know I really wasn't militant. I grew up in an evangelical home, tried to uh, go along to get along. But nobody told me the stakes in transracial adoption, and that the adopted child who becomes an adult is the one who holds the highest brunt of this experiment. And so I want my parents to know a couple things: that I do love them, but it's not enough to move the way that they did, in the sense that I believe that they tried to love me, but they didn't see me. Just like I didn't see the little girl in me. They didn't see my promise. They didn't know my ancestral legacy. They didn't know my mama's heartbeat. And they did not talk to the African American foster family, who, in the first chapter of my book, I talk about being pulled from that placement, which was my first placement.
Yeah.
And and that one of the things they gave me was a little black doll that looked just like me. And the story behind this black doll is that it came from a Shadanan. Let me just rephrase it because I'm going to say the name wrong. But it came from a Black-owned company in the 60s that came about because Black people were being discriminated from getting employment in mainstream factories. And so they created this factory to give Black employees an opportunity. And one of their streams, or one of their chains, was creating these dolls, baby Nancy dolls. And this little girl told me precisely what that doll looked like. I keyed it into Google, and out comes baby Nancy dolls. And I found the exact doll that my foster family gave. And it was, it came about in 1968, 69. They purchased this for me. And this doll her hair was just like mine. It was thick and curly, skin complexion exactly like mine, with a yellow undertone. And she had a doll and dress. And so when my white adoptive family took me into their home, I was carrying this black doll, this baby Nancy doll that looked just like me. And I also had wardrobes of dresses that came with sweaters and stockings along with hair beads. And I end the chapter by saying they taught me to put on my crown, to put on my crown. And then I go into living anew, this new life in this transracial adoption world. And it's interesting, this photo of this little girl, you see the dress that I got from my foster care family. You see the barrette that came with it. Now, my hair is not anymore as freshly braided as time goes on. And the black doll I had was replaced by an all-American Snoopy. That's the significance of this cover. And you look at this girl, little girl Rhonda, and her eyes are wide open. She is vulnerable and she is curious. And the question is, how do we care not just for her, but for all of our children? Black, brown, white. How are we caring for our children? And Torn from the Root is my story.
I had the chance to read the part of Nancy Doll and what it meant to you, and the replacement with Snoopy. And there was this little haunting sentence you had in there in italics that the message to you was, my being was insignificant. How diminished you must have felt from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is so important to have these conversations because uh, I feel like, as you mentioned here, there are maybe the brewings of conversations like this, but maybe they haven't risen to a level of awareness at a certain societal level where we really need to engage in very important questions about what this was, what it continues to be, as you've said, for young people that are still entering into this. Um, so I feel like you've obviously contributed to a real discourse here, right? A real conversation that needs to be had at the social level and at the academic level, all the levels that you mentioned and that are in your bios so neatly summarized of the areas that you have influence in. And I say that in a very respectful way, that you're reaching into all these communities and areas where this message needs to get through. What kind of reception are you having, do you find?
With Torn from the Root or my previous work?
With Torn from the Roots so far, with
Well,
the people who've seen it so far.
yes. Well, I'll tell you what. Okay, so this book is so special to me. All my books are, but this is so special to me. I'm supposedly below the radar, and not wanting to be out there just yet, waiting for the book release, which is June 30th at Politics and Prose. So any of you guys who are in the Washington, D.C. area, July 30th, I'll be at Politics at Prose at Urban Market. And there's a lot of seats that are filling up now. But I was minding my own business in the woods, really. Um, I hide out everywhere, you guys. But I was at my condo and I had dimmed the lights and had candles on and had a glass of wine and was getting ready to watch a movie and was just in my element. And I get this message on Messenger from somebody who's, oh my gosh, I got your book. And I'm thinking in their voices because I hadn't seen this before. I had not seen it. And she's screaming, and I finally called her on Messenger. I said, uh, can you tell me which book you're talking about? And she's saying Torn from the Root. And I'm flabbergasted. She's in the East Coast. It's 11:30 my time. I knew that they were going to print, but I had no idea when it was going to come. And so I said, well, would you hold on a minute? Because I couldn't get over how she got hers and I hadn't gotten it. So I went outside and there sits these boxes of books. And I'm like, oh, so, but she had done a reveal and did a fabulous job. And so then all of a sudden, people were who were getting their books were doing these reveals. Um, they were so ecstatic. So I think it's going to be a really exciting time for readers and for me. And I'm excited. I also got news that this book was picked up for audio. And so there is an actor reading my book for audio. But here, I'm thinking, given all the stuff I'm still doing, I'm like, wouldn't it be nice to do, my introduction and acknowledgement or conclusion in my own voice as a nice touch? Well, oh my goodness. I am not an audio professional. So I decided I'm just going to do the introduction, but I again was saved by Calvin University and just being in their lovely studio and having Kendrick help me go through that. So that's sort of my personal gift to readers is so that they can hear my voice. We'll just see. The actor's voice may be so much better than mine, but we'll see.
Exciting to have that input though.
Yeah, and so I'm also doing podcasts. So, a lot of different organizations want to know more about the book and the services I offer, coaching, consulting, and keynote speaking. And so I'm, dropping in to your wonderful gathering here as well.
It's really appreciated. It's such a complicated subject.
It
I
is.
find as with I admittedly have a much more limited perspective. I just haven't had these experiences or the knowledge of what's really going on in the worlds that you're reaching and that you're inhabiting. So it's like all of the information coming to me is something I'm assimilating. I'm going, this really kind of explodes categories for me, which I hope is seen as a good thing. It's a challenging thing in that sense of what is it that we need to be talking about here?
Yeah.
And I wonder, so you obviously are starting conversations with people and you're working on, I don't know, would you say building bridges or how would you describe what the actual work feels like to you?
Well, now it is building partnerships
Partnerships. Okay,
and
great.
it is with a sense of urgency. Um, one thing, let me just say, and I know people are probably going to want to know, are you for or against transracial adoption? I like to say we need to be beyond that question because there are so many families who have and are choosing transracial and intercountry adoptions. And there are so many adoptees who are out here um, struggling to navigate. And what is happening is, and we saw this in their own voices, transracial adoptees tell their stories, is that we presented in many cases in our families as white. We bought into their culture, their agenda, their values, and we self-sacrificed who we are and our voice. And that was to fit in. That was to be able to stay in our homes for fear that we might be placed elsewhere, for fear that we might be left, abandoned. And I want to say, you know, everyone is different. I'm not suggesting that all adoptees have gone through my path because they have not. That's why getting our stories out is so incredibly important. But when you look at the research, and you still look at the research, there was a study done in 2009, it came out in 2011, conducted by Liz Rowley and Rose Crater. Liz Rowley is a Asian adoptee, intercountry transracial adoptee, and they did a study on um, residential patterns. So, looking at transracial adoptive families, are they living similarly to white couples who are raising white children, or do they align more closely to multi-ethnic families? And of course, I wasn't surprised when the study said that white transracial adoptive families are more in line when it comes to where they live with white couples who are raising white children. I was not surprised, but I'm sure a lot of other people were. But I'm not surprised because nobody's telling me what we're doing differently since 1972, except a few things here and there. But what surprised me about the study is that it said that there are some white transracial adoptive families that are living in whiter spaces than the average white child in a white family. Let me repeat. There are some transracial adoptive families living in whiter spaces than the average white child raised in a white family. So when you look at that data, it tells you these young people are still living in predominantly white spaces, walking streets in predominantly white communities, going to, if they are religious, going to predominantly white churches, synagogues, temples, and not understanding their ethnic and cultural origins. And so, why does that matter? It matters because we saw it in my first book and we see it in a lot of narratives from adoptees, is that when they merge into society, as I did, the cops out here see this. They don't see that my dad is tall, blonde haired, and blue eyed. That doesn't save me anymore. I can't say to the cops, excuse me, but I was in a white family. That doesn't get me anywhere. And when I am applying for jobs, although I haven't done that for a while, but applying for jobs in in mainstream America, they are seeing this. So it's how comfortable is mainstream America at seeing this on boards in leadership positions. And I'm here to tell you, not everybody's comfortable. Just like not everybody in my white adoptive family cares that I'm really in that family. And so you see how things roll out very quickly, and you see that the demographics of Black America becomes my demographics. So the when I look at the wealth of white America versus Black America, white America has 5 times more wealth than Black America does. So I'm always thinking, how do I, in my own life, narrow that gap? And the answer to that is completely opposite to what my white brother and my white sister have to do. So, somewhere along the line, in order for me to evolve, I had to grow out of the agenda, the game, the structure of my white American family in order for me to survive. So now I have to do the opposite. Instead of dying to belong, in order for me to live and to survive another day, I have to accept all of me, and I have to look in the mirror and know that I'm Black. And so many of us have not seen clearly when we go out in America. Neither did I up until I had some incredible people tell me, Rhonda, you're Black, and what that means, and how to navigate that. Yeah, I'm giving you guys more than you anticipated. I know.
It's it's phenomenal though, and I don't mean that in a purely abstract way. I just mean it's a challenge to hear and see and learn. It's so important, and yeah, I can honestly tell you that I can't wait to work through the rest of your book, and I obviously want to go back and learn these foundational things too that you built on, and how important they must be for a wider conversation here.
Yeah, because, and I want to be very clear too. I have a very strong voice when it comes to the care of particularly Black and brown adoptees and white families. I care deeply, and I will fight to the hilt for us because the stakes are so high. However, when you look at my foundational work, it is very clear that I also care deeply about adoptive parents, about non-adopted siblings, and certainly about the communities of origin in which we come from. So I demonstrated that this is not just me thinking about it, but it's also me acting upon it. And I can't demand, which I'm going to be doing in this book tour, I cannot I cannot demand of politicians, of child welfare agencies, adoption agencies, and adoptive parents to do better if I'm not doing better. I can't demand um, to change policy if I haven't examined the current policy. And at this point, I want to see everybody at the table. I don't want to see just what's the word? Um, there's a word I'm thinking of, but just cohorts here and there. I want all the dots to be connected because we all need to be seen and heard, and we all have a valuable story. But because adoptees have far too long been ignored, and um, the communities in which these kids have come to have far been ignored, we have to tell them they are welcome in this discussion because we can't do this in a vacuum. No one has all the answers in this very complex, bold, nuanced, culturally nuanced situation here.
Honored that you've come to speak to us about it. Thank you for doing
Well,
that.
it's my honor. It's my
It's
honor.
I'm excited for what lies ahead for you in the book tour, and
Yes.
also um, the connections you make during a book tour. I'm sure are probably
Yes.
pretty important too. And I,
Yes.
and I'm excited that I'll get a chance to speak with you in person, and hopefully the book is out and I can get a copy of it, and maybe we
Oh,
can look
it's
at it
out.
together.
People are ordering it left and right on Amazon.
Great.
They're ordering it left and right on Temple University Press. If you go on Temple University Press and put in code 26 BKS, uppercase, um, you can get a 25% discount.
It's amazing. Do you mind if I put that in the chat here?
Nope, please
26
do.
EKS is
Yes, sir.
25% discount. That's great. What an honor for us to hear that right from you.
Yes, absolutely. And you can also go on rhondamroorda.com. That's my website. Go to
Okay, thank you.
events and you can see where I'm going and you can get free tickets and then also order the book.
Wonderful. I feel like there was so much in a conversation like this that all I really want to do is listen. I don't have a lot of insight yet. And not that I'm saying I will always have insight from things, but I just feel like I'm in such a learning phase with discovering what you're talking about here and the things
Yeah.
that I just want you to know how impactful it is for somebody like me
Thank you.
to
Thank
be able to hear
you.
that.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I think the conversation has also needs to go into more accountability. Accountability. And again, I'm a fund administrator, so I am always following money. I'm always following um whose voice is heard and whose is not. And when decisions are made, who's at the table? I'm always looking at stuff like that. Um, and torn from the root is really my examination, as I said earlier, about systems. But seeing who the system negotiated with in my adoption, which was my white adoptive parents. I also looked at what was going on. So when we have this discussion around, um, are there any Black parents out there, prospective parents who can adopt? Or why don't they adopt? Or questions like, you know, we adopted you because, we offered a better home. If it's going to Disney World once a year, or if it's having your own bedroom, if it's, but that those questions or those statements don't get at the tear I feel about the loss of my mama. That tear never goes away. Brian Post, who I've collaborated with, who talks about trauma informed healing, I asked him, does the tear ever go away, that deep pain? And he says it never goes away, but you can learn to feel it, see it, work with it, so to speak. And so none of these questions got to that. None of those questions spoke to the um, discriminatory practices in America, where white Americans during the time of my adoption, they could leave the urban area because they were given FHA loans. They were giving loans that were not afforded to Black people. So there's really not much difference between my mama and my adoptive mom and dad, other than she was not married and that they were white and were afforded opportunities that she was not afforded to. So when we look at why people make the decisions they make, especially if it's voluntary, we have to really look at the context. The context. Um, so my adopted parents lived in East Palmyra. They went from Rochester. They were not in the city of Rochester, New York. They went to East Palmyra, and my dad was a principal. He was a principal and a teacher in this church. Um, and then I had to research the legislation in New York at that time because I always felt like I was a commodity. And it was really actually my birth family that made the assessment. They got paid. And I'm like, I can't say that unless I have some data. I'm a very data driven. And it's not I just had to figure out why I always felt like a commodity, you know? So here I am researching the legislation, and sure enough, as I just discussed and torn from the root, New York was one of the first or the first state in the union that offered foster to adopt subsidies. The
Hmm.
question came, why wasn't that offered to my Black American, I'm sorry, my the African American uh 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 um
Foster
family,
family? Yeah.
foster family who wanted me. But the
Yeah.
system said that they were too old. But again, biases. But why couldn't they have adopted me? They had far more experience than my white adopted family. They had me from the age of 0 to 2. Well, eight, it was really shy of 2 years. So then I look at why didn't, my most likely my white adopted parents got this subsidy, and it follows the child. So even though we moved to Washington, D.C. a year later, the subsidy would go to the child until the age of 18 when I was cut off. Actually, I could have been cut off a lot earlier because I was always trying to make money to sustain myself, even at the age of 11. Um,
Hmm.
and so that's probably how I understood how to navigate in corporate America. And I pivot in a way that is very like the ways I had to pivot in my family. Um, and so I followed this money, which asked me again, why wasn't this money sent back to the community where I came from? My mama and her family and the community that I came from. So you ask a lot of these questions. And why it matters is that this little girl has a whole lot of people making decisions for her
Yeah.
without knowing her heartbeat, what she wanted. And frankly, the little girl Rhonda would have given up trips to Disney World, would have given up her own bedroom for the opportunity to touch my mama, to have my nervous system function in the at the level it needed to function, and to answer two questions: who I am and where I came from. And without knowing those, you are moving in this world with roots hanging and
Yeah.
nowhere to go. And that is what that little girl felt. I can buy a new car. I can buy a jewelry, but it does nothing for the little girl. And so, how do we get to what really matters in a child? That's the answers we need to um, talk about, instead of how are we funding the people we choose we want to fund, and then build a narrative around that.
Very powerful. Thank you. I wonder if we can break here, and what we'll do is we'll just end the recorded portion and then allow for a few minutes of Q&A. We usually take the Q&A offline because that allows people more anonymity if they'd like it, and it doesn't end up on YouTube that way. But Rhonda, I don't know how to thank you enough for being such an incredible guest here, and really
My honor.
oh, it's been great. I hope that the conversation is something again that I can cultivate in myself to learn more about, and also to have these dialogues open. But thank you for the work you're doing, and
You're welcome.
oh, very much looking forward to it.
Yes, and thank you for what NAAP is doing. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to jump on. I'm actually going to a Sarah McLaughlin concert. So you see me doing this.
You're about to
So,
go. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I'm like, but I wanted to be a part of this community. I'm glad it's being taped. I will put it on my website so more people can hear it. But I really care deeply about the work your organization is doing for adoptive parents, adoptees. It is, for so many of us, we don't have a place to go. And I see you, and I want you to know I do. I see you, and I appreciate you. And the answers of how we move forward is by hearing your voice as well. We have to hear each other's voices, and we've got to do better for our children. We've got to do better for our children.
What a great way to tie it together here at the end. So I hope everybody will get a copy of Rhonda's book. And thank you for coming out to support here for the great information she's provided here and the exchange we've had and what an important conversation that is. So everybody, hope we see you back soon on happy hour and other NAAP offerings. So right now we're going to hear that the recording is stopped, and please stay on for a few minutes of Q&A. Thanks, everybody.